Hey, it's Steph. Thanks for watching today's video. I have a very exciting update to one of my goals for 2024. If you are not familiar, I wanted to create a look with each eyeshadow palette in my collection. I did post an update in July with how I was doing so far mid-year, and now I'm here to share you how I did the rest of the year. So if you're looking forward to seeing each look that I've created in the second half of the year with my eyeshadow palettes, continue watching. If you are not subscribed, I hope you do so before you leave. There will be lots of content coming in December, wrapping up the year of 2024, and I'm just so excited for 2025. I have some big goals for my panning journey, and I would love to have you join me in those. I do have my laptop here in my lap so I can look at every look as I talk about them, and they are in alphabetical order. But I did want to share just like kind of recap of July. So I started the year off with 59 eyeshadow palettes. So my goal for this year was to create a look with each of those 59. In my July update, I had used 40 of them already. So I was off to a really great start. And I did share a couple looks from palettes that I have since decluttered, and that reigns true for this update as well. So I currently have 50 eyeshadow palettes, a little spoiler for my inventory, but I have since created looks with 20 of my palettes that I had not created in the first half of the year, which means I have created looks with 60 palettes. So I'm not sure how that happens, but I think because I've introduced some palettes into my collection and have decluttered quite a few palettes in my collection, there are some looks in here with palettes that I have decluttered, but also with my new palettes. So I haven't really done the math, but I have a spreadsheet and I've been keeping track of every single palette, and I have created a look with every single palette in my current collection, which is very exciting. I have met my 2024 goal. So let's just go through each of my looks. It's really fun to see the different color stories and looks I was able to create with my palettes. And I have, of course, created more than one look with some of these because I've had them in projects, but I will only be sharing one look from each palette, and it'll be my favorite look that I've created with it. Anyway, the first palette is my ColourPop Making Mauves, and this is just a beautiful everyday look. Mauves are just such a go-to for me. I love cool tone neutrals, and this was just a really easy look, but I've only created one with this palette exclusively. So that's just a basic eye look there. Next is ColourPop of Quartz, and I absolutely loved this dramatic eye look that I created with this. Man, I usually don't like mattes with sparkle, like that bottom right hand black, but it made this look turn out so cool, even though I got a ton of glitter fallout from that. So that's not ideal, but this look was just so fun. Next is my ColourPop Sweet As Can Be, and this is a very warm tone palette, so it's not my favorite in my collection, but I actually really enjoyed this yellow look that I created with this. I only used 2 shades. It's super simple, but it kind of made me realize that I can wear yellow, just not all the time. Next is my Dose of Colors Marvelous Mauves. This is an all matte eyeshadow palette, so my look was all matte, and I love an all matte eye look. Before I started panning, my go-to looks were all mattes. I did not use shimmers on an everyday basis like I do now. So this was kind of like going back to my true roots before I even started my channel, and I just, again, mauves, they're so beautiful. So next is a palette that I have since decluttered. It is my Fantasy Cosmetica Rogue palette. I created this with inspiration from my friend Kaylin. Her channel is Makeup Lens, and she had created a look with this, and I was like, I have to recreate that. So that palette photo is actually her photo, but the eye look is my recreation of it. So I decluttered this just because I know I'm not going to give this palette as much love as it deserves. I gave it away to a fellow panner, a fellow makeup lover that I just know will use it a lot more often than I will. So the next palette is my Half Caked Pretty Precious, and this is just a beautiful everyday look. I love the shimmers in this palette, and of course the mattes too, but yeah, this is just a beautiful, like, bronzy everyday look. Next is my Juvia's Place Garden of Juvia's palette. This is a very pastel palette, and I'm actually surprised. My favorite look was the greens and yellows, and I just thought that was a really interesting look for me, and it got out of my comfort zone a little bit, but I just love how these shades came together. Next is my Kaleidos Lunar Lavender. I had to pick the look that I created that's a little frosty, and it's kind of like winter inspired. I know that's just like a little star, but in my mind it's kind of like a snowflake. I know it's not as detailed as some makeup users create, but I just thought this look was so pretty. And then my other Kaleidos palette is the Astral Pink palette, and this color story kind of freaks me out. It's very bold, and I'm not really sure how to use like the warm tone mattes with the cool tone shimmers, but I did use every single shade in this look, and it turned out gorgeous. I love this. This is probably as dramatic as I would go for an everyday, like going to the store or something like that, but I really did enjoy these shadows on my eye. Next is another palette that I have since decluttered. It is my Clarity Bloom palette. Again, I just gave this to a fellow makeup lover that I just knew she would get a lot more use out of this because she does really bold, beautiful looks, and I did create a more wearable look with this palette. I did an ombre wing and with, you know, the shimmer, and I really do love this look, but that's probably the only type of look I would do with this, so I figured I would pass it along because I have other palettes that I can create a look like this with. Next is a very neutral look. This is the Milani Soft and Sultry palette. Again, it's super simple. Everyday look. I can do this any day of the week using these shadows. I considered this palette as a pan that palette for next year, but it would take forever. These shadows are so deep and the mattes are so hardly pressed that I'm just like, no, not gonna attempt. The next palette is my NARS Climax, and I created such beautiful looks with this palette, but this one especially, I loved the blue wing, and I just thought it's just a little different. I created, you know, some bronzy looks with this, a green look with it, but I just really love how I did that blue wing. Next is an eyeshadow palette that I have depotted. So I did declutter the palette, but I kept a few shades. So this is the Natasha Denona Blue Purple palette, and this palette is just super dark and dramatic for me. I prefer lighter looks, kind of like what I'm wearing today. So I just felt like I would not get much use out of these after, you know, using it a few times, but this is actually my favorite look that I created. Very dramatic, very blue purple as it is called, and yeah, I just know I would never wear that on an everyday basis, but it is really pretty to like photograph. Next is my Odin's Eye Jewels and Gem palette, and I just had to do a cool tone look with this. This is the only look that I created with this palette. And honestly, I have considered decluttering this. I have offered it to some of my friends, but nobody wanted it. I do have 2 pans in there as well, but I don't know, I'm just not super impressed with the shimmers in this palette. I get a lot of fallout from them, but this is not a review of this palette. I do really enjoy this look, but it is the only one that I created with this palette. Next is another Odin's Eye palette that I absolutely love. So I don't know what the differences and formulas, but this is the Flora Story palette, and I created this green look in a Get Ready With Me on my channel, and I just love how I added that pop of pink on the lower lash line. You can't really see it in this photo, but I do kind of wish that the inner corner shade wasn't as like multi-chrome. I know, I'm sure everyone loves that, but for me, as an inner corner, I just kind of wish it was like a frosty white. Just because, you know, I'm so fair, sometimes that shade looks a little dark in my inner corner. The next palette is my Pat McGrath Labs Bijou Brilliance. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Bijou Brilliance Lunar Nightshade palette. This is the only look I've created with this palette, and I was a little worried because the only matte in here is super dark, but I was able to use that like in the outer corner as kind of like a base under the blue shimmers. I usually put something in my crease in transition shade, but with this look I couldn't because that shade is so dark. So it was a little bit different like technique and way of creating an eyeshadow look for myself personally, but I do enjoy this look. It does not have as much impact as I would expect from a Pat McGrath palette, but maybe it just doesn't have any of the special shades in it. I'm not really familiar with what has her special shades and what doesn't, but I think it's a really pretty look. The next palette was my Profusion Ethereal palette, and this palette scares me. It is very bold. I have tried to declutter this, but nobody wanted it, so I'm going to keep it. But I do really love this look, and it's very bold. I would never wear this on an everyday basis, but it's, you know, pretty for videos and photography, like I said before. But yeah, that purple shimmer on the lid, so pretty. I could easily use this palette instead of the Clarity Bloom palette for like any look that I would create with the Bloom palette. Next is another eyeshadow palette that I have decluttered, but it is my Revolution Butterfly palette. I don't remember the exact name of it, but it's on the screen. And this I created in a Get Ready With Me. I love this look. I think it's so fun, but I decluttered this to my friend Jamie when we met in person, and I thought maybe her or her daughter could use this palette more than I, so I was happy to give that away. Second to last look is from my Tarte Make Believe in Yourself palette. This is a very, very basic everyday look. The quality of this photograph is not as good as my others because I actually took this on a road trip to, like, it was like a 6-hour road trip, and yeah, this was the palette that I took with me, and so it was just great for every day, and I had all the shades that I needed for any look, but I just loved this like simple bronzy look that I created. And then the very last palette that I'm sharing today is my Viseart Violet Etendu. Oh, I know I'm butchering that name. I will have it on the screen. This is a beautiful, cool toned, neutral, everyday kind of palette. I do enjoy this look, but I feel like the shimmers just weren't as impactful as I would want them to be. Yeah, it was kind of just like, I was unimpressed. I don't know how to put it. It is beautiful. It's great for just an everyday throw on your eyes, but I feel like I've heard so much hype about Viseart that I expected more, but it is beautiful. Let me know if you, I don't know if I'm the only one that feels that way, but that is the last look that I shared, number 20, and I'm just super proud of myself for meeting my goal. I gave a little bit of love to every single one of my eyeshadow palettes this year. I am going to set a different type of goal for 2025, so be sure to subscribe if you want to see my 2025 goals next year. I'll be posting that in January, but I hope you enjoyed seeing my looks. Let me know down below if you saw a trend or if you have a favorite look that I shared. Let me know in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed, I hope you do so before you leave. I will see you all in my next video. Bye.